I moved into the building because it was cheap. That's it. No dreams of community, no fantasies about neighborly barbecues or borrowed cups of sugar. Just a Craigslist listing, low rent, and a decent location near my office. That's all I needed. The apartment itself was fine. Second floor, thin walls, hot water that worked only if you turned the knob just right. A little rough around the edges, but it suited me. I didn't need perfect. What I didn't expect was the first note. It showed up 3 days after I moved in, taped neatly to the center of my door. It was written on thick cardstock, not a post-it, and in handwriting that looked way too nice for a grocery list. Welcome to the building. Don't trust the elevator past 9 p.m., and if you hear the pipes knock 3 times, just wait. They stop. Usually. -2C. That's it. No name, no smiley face, not even a hi. Just weird, practical advice from an anonymous neighbor. I should have thought it was creepy, but it made me smile. I taped the note to the fridge and went about my day. The next one came a week later. Your hallway plant died. I replaced it. It's called a snake plant. They don't need much. 2C. I opened the door, and sure enough, my pathetic little pothos was gone. In its place was a tall, sharp-leaved plant in a white ceramic pot I definitely didn't buy. This time, I replied, I found a blank note card, scribbled a quick thank you, and taped it to my door before I left for work. When I came back that evening, it was gone, and a new one was in its place. You're welcome. Don't overwater it, or name it something stupid like Leif Erikson -2C. So of course I immediately named it Leif Erikson. This became our thing. Once or twice a week I'd get a new note. Always simple, sometimes dryly funny, sometimes weirdly thoughtful. The guy in 3A plays trombone. Sundays, prepare emotionally. You microwave fish at work, don't you? You feel like someone who would. Nice hoodie yesterday. Charcoal suits you. If you ever want to avoid Jehovah's Witnesses, knock on my door first and pretend we're dating. I started looking forward to them more than I should have. The handwriting became familiar, like a friend's voice. I didn't know anything about 2C, except that he, I had decided it was a he, don't ask me how, was observant, sarcastic, and had better penmanship than most people who journal in coffee shops. I started leaving my own notes in return. I didn't overthink them, just little quips or reactions, like we were having a slow-motion conversation on paper. One day, after I complimented the coffee beans I could sometimes smell drifting into the hallway, I found this taped to my door. If you're serious about good coffee, stop using a Keurig. I have an actual espresso machine. Come over sometime. Doors usually open around 7. 2C. That one made me pause. It was the first invitation. The first time it crossed into actual interaction. Real, face-to-face stuff. I hesitated. I didn't go. Instead, I left a note that said, maybe, but you'll have to forgive my addiction to convenience first. He didn't reply. No note the next day, or the next. I hated how that made me feel. It was strange how fast I missed it, the little square of paper waiting for me after a long day. Even though we'd never spoken face-to-face, 2C's notes had started to feel like a part of my routine, this quiet back and forth that filled the space between solitude and connection. But after I dodged the espresso invitation, it stopped. No more notes, no more little sarcastic remarks or unsolicited advice, just silence. And the hallway felt quieter than usual, like it knew something had shifted. I told myself it was fine, that this was always going to be a temporary thing. Something funny to tell people about over drinks. Oh yeah, my neighbor used to leave weirdly charming notes on my door. Total mystery guy. End of story. But then Friday came. I'd had one of those days where everything small goes wrong. Printer jams, coffee spills, passive-aggressive emails. I came home already exhausted, and when I stepped into the hallway and saw my door empty, I felt a flicker of disappointment that I hated myself for. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, kicked off my shoes, and then there was a knock. Not a heavy knock, not urgent, just a soft, casual knock. Like someone didn't want to spook me, but also wasn't going to leave until I opened. I peeked through the peephole. 2C. I knew it had to be him because I recognized the hoodie, that gray one I'd seen him wear twice when I was pretending not to glance down the hall. He had his head slightly down, hands in his pockets like he wasn't sure if he should have come at all. I hesitated, then opened the door. He looked up. And yeah, he was definitely not what I expected. He was younger than I imagined. Maybe my age. Sharp jawline, dark stubble, tired eyes. The kind of face that probably looked good at every angle without even trying. His hoodie was old, the drawstrings uneven, and he was barefoot. "You didn't come by," he said. That's how he started. No hi, no introduction. You left me hanging. "I didn't think you were serious," I said, too quick. He raised an eyebrow. "You think I go around inviting people into my apartment for fake espresso?" I cleaned my kitchen. That's how serious I was. I laughed, caught off guard. "That is serious." He didn't laugh back, but he wasn't cold, just unsure. "I thought we had a thing," he said, like it was the most obvious conclusion in the world. "A thing?" I repeated. "The notes. I don't do that with just anyone. I hate people." I couldn't help smiling. "You're really bad at compliments." He leaned against the doorframe, more relaxed now, arms crossed. "You didn't seem like someone who scares easy. But maybe I was wrong." That got under my skin a little. "I don't scare easy. I just didn't want to make things weird." "They were already weird," he said. "That's what made it good." I paused. "Okay, maybe you're right." He tilted his head. "You want to start over?" "What does starting over look like with someone you've already fake dated to avoid Jehovah's Witnesses?" He smirked. "Coffee, no notes, just talking. Maybe names." That made me nervous. Not in a bad way. In the way you get when something that felt safe and distant suddenly becomes real. He wasn't hiding behind a door or a note anymore. He was here, in front of me. I nodded. "Okay, yeah, let's do that." "Tomorrow?" "Tomorrow." He stepped back. "Cool. I'm Kyle, by the way." "I'm Drew." He nodded, like he already knew that. "See you, Drew." I closed the door and leaned back against it, heart doing weird little things it hadn't done in a long time. The next day, I went to his apartment at exactly 7:03 a.m. I knocked. He opened the door mid-laugh, like he'd been expecting me to be late and was already amused by it. "You're 3 minutes late," he said, stepping aside to let me in. His place looked like someone who didn't try hard but somehow still made it look intentional. Books stacked in uneven piles, a half-dead fern in the window, an espresso machine that looked like it cost more than my couch. The smell of coffee filled the room, and something else. "Cinnamon? You bake?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Trader Joe's frozen cinnamon rolls," he admitted. "Don't let it ruin the illusion." Noted. We settled at his small kitchen table, round, slightly wobbly, with 2 mismatched chairs. He poured the espresso like it was a ritual, set the cup in front of me, and sat down across from me. So, he said, "What do you do when you're not ignoring invitations?" I smiled. "Graphic designer. Mostly freelance. Too much screen time. You?" "Audio engineer," he said. "Podcasts, voiceovers, indie bands that pay me in weed or beer." I laughed. "So you're broke too?" "Oh, absolutely. But I like it," we talked. About nothing and everything. About coffee and music, and how our building smells like old carpet and regret. He asked about my tattoos. I asked about the ridiculous amount of succulents on his bookshelf. He told me he once left a passive-aggressive note on someone's car and then couldn't sleep for 3 nights. And then he said something that stuck. "You know, I was nervous about you." "Why?" "Because you looked like someone who wouldn't want to talk." "You have that. Don't bother me. Walk." I do not have a "don't bother me" walk. You do, but then you laughed at the plant thing, and I figured maybe. Maybe what? Maybe I wasn't wrong for trying? That shut me up for a second, because I didn't realize how long it had been since someone tried. Really tried. We finished the coffee, and I left not long after with the promise of dinner next week. He said he'd cook. I didn't believe him, but when I got back to my place, there was a new note on my door, just 2 words. I'm glad. I didn't expect the dinner to actually happen. Kyle seemed like the kind of guy who'd throw out plans casually, not maliciously, just in that way people do when they like the idea of something more than the reality. And I wasn't exactly someone who took chances lately, especially not ones that involved potential closeness. But then Thursday afternoon rolled around, and there was a text from an unknown number. Still allergic to raisins? Or can I make you my mom's questionable casserole? I smiled before I even finished reading it. I hadn't given Kyle my number. Not directly, anyway. He must have grabbed it from one of the notes I'd left early on. I'd signed one with my name and number, probably back when I still thought I was being clever. No raisins, no casseroles. I want proof of real cooking. His reply came 5 seconds later. Shit. I ended up bringing dessert. Well, store-bought cookies, but I put them on a plate so it looked like I'd put in effort. When I knocked, Kyle opened the door wearing a black apron over a plain white t-shirt. He looked halfway between chef and someone about to paint a wall. Don't judge the apron, he said. It has pockets. I brought cookies, I said. He took the plate with exaggerated reverence. My hero. Because dinner might be aggressively mediocre. It wasn't. It was pasta. Some kind of creamy sun-dried tomato thing with bits of grilled chicken and roasted garlic bread on the side. Nothing fancy, but definitely homemade. It smelled like effort and tasted like comfort, and by the second bite, I was already trying to remember if I'd eaten a real meal that week. I'm impressed, I said. You should be. This is like 3 YouTube videos and 1 panic text to my sister. Do you always cook in an apron? He glanced down. I was going to take it off, but I forgot. I leaned back in my chair. Leave it on. It's working for you. He looked up, surprised for a second, then smirked. Noted. We ate with music playing in the background. Some soft indie playlist that made the apartment feel even warmer than it already did. The conversation flowed easily, like it always did with him, but it felt different now. Closer, like we were finally seeing each other in full focus. Somewhere between finishing our food and demolishing the cookies, I caught myself watching him. Not just glancing. Watching, the way his hands moved when he talked, the way he listened without interrupting. The little things that had snuck under my radar in our hallway note-passing phase. And yeah, the way his lips curled up at the corners when he smiled. The kind of smile you couldn't really fake. He caught me looking. What? He asked, voice soft. Nothing, I said quickly. Then, because it felt wrong to lie, I added, You're just not what I expected. How so? I don't know. I guess I thought you were going to be some weird recluse who used Post-its instead of actual words because you hated people. Oh, I definitely hate people, I laughed. But not you, he added. And there was something about the way he said it, casual, but careful, that made my stomach tighten in that stupid, involuntary way I hadn't felt in months. You barely know me, I said, quieter now. True, he nodded. But I know you take your trash out right before midnight. You hum when you're microwaving something. You always check the door twice before locking it. And you laugh like you're trying not to. I stared at him, speechless for a beat. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. I noticed things. I swallowed. Clearly, he smiled again, smaller this time. And you leave the best replies. Your sarcasm is top tier. I knew we were going to be friends after the note you left about my doormat. I smirked. The wipe your feet or go to hell one? That's the one. We sat there for a second. A comfortable, quiet settling between us. And then he reached across the table. Not for my hand, just placed his fingers near mine. Not touching, not yet, but close enough that it felt like a test. I didn't move, neither did he, and eventually I slid my pinky against his. That tiny touch sent a stupid rush through me. It shouldn't have. It was barely anything, but it was also everything. "You want to watch a movie or something?" he asked after a moment, pulling his hand back. I nodded. "Yeah, let's do that." He cleaned up quickly, too quickly, like he didn't want to give either of us time to overthink what just happened. And then we ended up on his couch, a little too far apart at first, both pretending to care about the movie more than we did. It was some slow burn indie drama. I couldn't tell you the plot if you paid me, because all I could think about was the space between us, how every minute that passed seemed to make it smaller. How at some point, maybe around the second act, Kyle shifted a little closer. How I didn't lean away. I felt his arm brush mine. He didn't pull back. By the time the credits rolled, we were sitting shoulder to shoulder. Warm, quiet, close. He turned to me, that same careful expression on his face. "Okay, so," I looked at him. "So, is this weird?" I shook my head. "No, not to me." He nodded slowly. "Good, because I've been wanting to do this for a while." Before I could ask what this was, he leaned in. Not fast, not dramatic, just close enough that I had time to say no if I wanted to. But I didn't. So I met him halfway, and when our lips touched, gentle, unsure, real, I felt something shift inside me. Something quiet, but deep. Like the start of something I hadn't let myself want in a long time. We pulled back after a few seconds. He looked at me, searching for something in my face. I must have passed whatever test he was giving me, because he smiled. "Guess I'll have to leave a note about that," he said. I laughed, heart beating faster than it should have. "Don't you dare." The morning after our first kiss, I woke up with the dumbest grin on my face. I wasn't even in his bed. Nothing like that happened. We didn't fall asleep tangled up or pressed against each other. I went back to my own apartment that night. Kissed. A little dazed. A little nervous. A little high on whatever it was that had sparked between us. But it stuck with me. That kiss. The way he had looked at me right before, like he was asking without words. The way his lips moved softly against mine, testing, then confident. The way we'd both sat back afterward, not saying much, just letting it settle. I liked that. I liked him. I didn't know what came next, though. That was the part one wasn't good at. I'd had relationships before, sure, but nothing that came from something so casual, so unexpected. No buildup of dating apps or structured dinners or "so what are you looking for" conversations. This had just happened, with notes, and sarcasm, and hallway glances I didn't realize meant anything until they did. And now, I was standing in front of my fridge, drinking orange juice straight from the carton and staring at the blank space where his last note used to be, wondering if I was supposed to text him. Call him. Knock on his door. Before I could make up my mind, there was a knock on mine. I opened it. He was standing there barefoot again, hoodie sleeves pushed up, holding a takeout cup of coffee in each hand. "I got you the one with oat milk," he said. "Because you strike me as a fake milk kind of guy." I blinked at him, smiling. "I am, actually." I figured. He held one out. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. "Yeah, of course." He wandered in like it was the most natural thing in the world, like we'd been doing this for years. Set the coffees down on my counter, then turned to look at me like he wasn't entirely sure what to say next. "So," he said, eyes flicking toward mine. "We kissed." I nodded slowly. "We did. You're okay with that?" I took a breath. "Yeah, more than okay." He let out a soft laugh, relief flickering across his face. "Good." Because I was starting to spiral last night, thinking I misread everything. I stepped a little closer. "You didn't." "Okay." He looked around like he needed to focus on something that wasn't my face. "Cool. Good. So what are we?" "Neighbors," I said, smirking. He rolled his eyes. I mean, besides that. I leaned against the counter. I don't know. But I'd like to find out. He nodded again. Okay. Same. We stood there for a moment in this easy, weird, undefined comfort. Neither of us rushing it. Neither of us trying to name it too fast. After a few minutes of sipping coffee and low-key dodging eye contact, he said, Hey, I had an idea. Oh God. Come over tonight, he said. But not for dinner or a movie. Just come over, I have a surprise. A surprise? You'll like it, promise. I eyed him suspiciously. Is it murder? I mean, I won't say it's not murder, but if it is, I promise to make it quick. He left with that, and I spent the rest of the day trying not to read too much into it. That night, I showed up at 2C at exactly 8 p.m. I didn't knock. I just opened the door because he'd texted, just walk in, it's open, trust me. When I did, I stopped dead in the entryway. His living room looked completely different. The coffee table had been pushed back. The lights were dim. A blanket and 2 pillows had been laid out on the floor. On the TV, You've Got Mail. Kyle was sitting cross-legged, already in sweats, holding a giant bowl of popcorn. This is your surprise? I asked, stepping in and closing the door behind me. It's movie night, he said, grinning. But not just any movie night. I figured we'd do it middle school sleepover style. Floor, snacks, cheesy movie, questionable emotional vulnerability. You're a lot of things, you know that? I try. I sat down beside him. We didn't talk much during the movie, not because we didn't have anything to say, but because something about sitting that close, sharing popcorn, exchanging smirks at bad lines, it felt like the kind of silence that meant something. Comfortable, warm, familiar. Somewhere around the last act, I felt his pinky hook around mine again, just like before. Not a move, not a grab. Just a little question mark written in skin. This time, I turned my hand, laced our fingers together. He looked over at me. I didn't need to say anything. He leaned in and kissed me again. This one was different. Slower, warmer. Like, we weren't testing anymore. Like, we already knew. When we pulled back, the credits were rolling. He rested his head against my shoulder. I used to think being close to someone meant giving up space, he said quietly. But this doesn't feel like that. No, I said. It doesn't. And then we just sat there, long after the movie ended, fingers still tangled. Quiet, except for the soft whir of the credits loop, and the realization that whatever this was, it was starting to matter. Things didn't change all at once after that night. There wasn't a grand declaration or sudden shift. No labels, no what are we talk. But the energy between us, that changed. We were still neighbors, still sarcastic, still independent in our own ways. But now there were text messages before bed. Coffee runs where he remembered how I liked it. Little touches, subtle but deliberate. I'd feel his hand brush against mine when we passed each other in the hall, or a casual arm around my shoulder when he walked me back from the corner store. It was the kind of intimacy that doesn't announce itself. It just builds. He didn't leave notes on my door anymore. At first I missed them. Then I realized it was because we didn't need them. He was just knocking now. Coming over. Existing in my space like it was half his. And yeah, I liked that. But then, almost 3 weeks after that movie night, something changed again. It was subtle at first. He canceled plans one night. Said he was tired. The next day, he didn't respond to a text for hours. The day after that, no word at all. And then on Thursday, when I got home from work, there was a note on my door. I froze. It had been weeks since the last one. The handwriting was his. Same blocky style, sharp corners. But this one wasn't sarcastic or playful. Sorry if I've been weird. Needed some space. Just dealing with something. Not about you. K. It hit different. The handwriting looked shakier than usual. Just enough to notice. And it wasn't taped as neatly either. A little off-center. like he hadn't really cared if it stuck or not. I stared at it for a solid minute before peeling it off. Then I went down the hall. 2C's door was closed. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again. Kyle? Still nothing. I stood there for a moment, hands still raised, torn between respecting the space he asked for and ignoring it completely, because my chest was already tight from imagining what something meant. I didn't knock again, but I slid a note under his door that said, "Okay, I get it, but if you need me, I'm here, anytime." I went home, turned off my lights, laid in bed, and stared at the ceiling for way too long. He didn't text the next day, or the day after that. By Sunday, I was considering doing something dramatic, like showing up with ice cream, or kicking down his door, or convincing myself he'd moved out in the middle of the night, and I'd never know why. Then, I heard a knock. Not at my door, at my window, which was insane because I lived on the second floor. I ran over, lifted the blinds. There he was, standing barefoot on the tiny shared fire escape that connected our windows. He looked awful. Not like sick, just tired, eyes puffy, hoodie inside out. Like he hadn't really slept. I opened the window. "What are you doing?" He climbed in without asking. "Jesus," I muttered, stepping back as he stumbled slightly. "Are you okay?" Kyle didn't answer right away. He just looked around like he hadn't seen my apartment in a while. Then he turned to me, eyes red. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For going dark. For the note. For climbing in like some fire escape raccoon." I crossed my arms. "Talk to me." He sat on the edge of my bed like he didn't trust his legs to stand. "My dad's sick," he said finally. "Like, bad. He called me last week and didn't say it directly, but I could tell. You know how some people talk around things and it just makes it worse?" I nodded. "He's in a home out in New Jersey. I didn't know how bad it had gotten. I went out there for a few days. Didn't tell anyone. Stayed in some motel. Just sat there watching him forget my name." He looked down, rubbing at his eyes. "I haven't seen him in over 2 years. Long story. But seeing him like that, it just messed me up." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked quietly. "I don't know. I didn't want to drag you into it. We're just this thing, whatever we are. I didn't want to ruin it by being some emotionally unstable guy crying in a parking lot." "You think that would ruin it?" He looked up at me, miserable. "Wouldn't it?" I sat next to him, not touching, just close enough. "No, that would make it real." We didn't say anything for a while. Eventually, I leaned my head against his shoulder. He didn't flinch, just let out a breath, like he'd been holding it for days. "You don't have to fix anything," I said. "You just have to let me be here." He closed his eyes. After a minute, he whispered, "I missed your sarcasm. It's been 4 days. Don't be dramatic." He let out a short, tired laugh, the kind that sounded more like breathing out grief. "I like the notes," he said after a while. "Even when I stopped leaving them, I still thought about what I would have written." "Yeah?" He nodded. "Like, this morning? I almost left one on your door that said, 'Don't forget your umbrella. It's going to rain, and so am I.'" But then I realized that sounded like a line from a high school poetry slam. I nudged him. Would have loved it anyway. He looked at me, then leaned in and kissed me, soft and slow, the kind of kiss that says, "I'm here, even if I'm not okay." When he pulled back, I could see the weight hadn't lifted, not really, but it shifted. He wasn't carrying it alone anymore. And that was something. That night, he stayed over for the first time. No closeness, no expectations, just 2 people who found each other in the middle of a hallway and started passing notes until something real came out of it. I woke up the next morning to find him already gone, but taped to my coffee maker was a note. "Don't worry, I'll be back. Just needed a run and a muffin, probably named Leif Erikson." "'Kay," I smiled. Then I folded the note and stuck it to the fridge next to the very first one. The days that followed were a blur of quiet moments that somehow meant more than all the loud ones before them. Kyle didn't move in, not officially, but he started keeping a toothbrush in my bathroom, a hoodie slung over the back of my kitchen chair, socks in my drawer, which was wild considering how possessive he was about socks being paired like soulmates or not at all. He still went back to his apartment most nights, said he needed space to think, to breathe. I got that, I was the same. But we'd gravitate back toward each other by evening. Like magnets. Or maybe just two people who'd found comfort in the exact weird shape the other one made. It was messy, sometimes. There were nights he got quiet and drifted off mid-sentence, like the weight of everything with his dad came crashing back in waves. He never made a scene. Just kind of stopped talking. Like he was buffering. I learned to recognize those moments. Didn't try to cheer him up. Just let the silence sit. Held his hand under the blanket. Let him know I was there without pushing. One night, he asked, "Do you ever worry this is all just temporary?" We were lying on my bed, facing each other, the sheets twisted around our legs. "Like what?" I asked. "This," he said, motioning between us. "Whatever this is. What if it's just because of timing, or loneliness, or proximity?" It stung a little. Not because he was wrong to ask, but because I had asked myself the same thing. At first, anyway. "I think," I said slowly, "proximity might get you in the door, but it doesn't make someone crawl through your window at 2 a.m. to talk about their dad." He smiled a little at that. "Fair. I don't know what this is going to look like 6 months from now," I added, "but I do know that I don't feel like I'm just killing time with you." He looked at me like he was trying to memorize that exact sentence. "Okay," he said softly. I kissed him then. Not deep, not rushed, just a simple press of lips that said I meant it. A week later, something shifted again. But this time, it was good. He'd come over after a run, still in sweats, hoodie soaked with sweat, hair wild from the wind. I was already in my usual spot on the couch, working on a logo revision for a moody coffee shop owner who couldn't decide if he wanted a minimalist fox or a vintage owl with character. Kyle flopped down next to me and said, "Okay, don't freak out." Literally never a good way to start a sentence. He grinned. "I told my sister about you." I blinked. "Oh, yeah. I kinda might have also told her we were seeing each other." "Are we?" I asked, more curious than defensive. He looked at me. "Do you want to be?" I stared at him for a second, his flushed cheeks, the tiny scar on his chin I never noticed before, the way his eyes were nervous but still holding mine like he wanted to be caught. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, I do." He let out a breath like he'd been holding it for 2 days. "Okay, cool. Me too." We didn't make a big thing of it. No champagne, no update your relationship status moment. But there was something grounding in saying it out loud, in letting it be real, even in the small ways. After that, things became easier, calmer, which was weird considering how little in either of our lives was actually calm. He still visited his dad once a week, and he always came back a little quieter, a little more tired. But now he let me ask questions, let me hold him after, let me be part of the orbit instead of standing outside it. Sometimes we still communicated like old times. One night I came home late and found a folded note on my pillow. "Your bed smells like me now. You're welcome. KPS, I may have also eaten your last Pop-Tart. Justice will find me." I smiled so hard my face hurt. The next morning, I taped a note to his coffee mug. "There are consequences to your crimes. I hope you're prepared to atone. D." Later, he kissed my neck while I was brushing my teeth and whispered, "I'd do it again." Then, one Saturday, I woke up to find my apartment empty. No Kyle, no note, no text. For a full 30 minutes, I spiraled. Thought maybe he'd ghosted. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe it was too much. Maybe I was too much. But then, I heard a knock. He stood there in the hallway, holding a small plant in one hand and a grocery bag in the other. "Is that?" I asked. "A new leaf Erickson," he said proudly. "The old one died." but this one's hardier, like us. I stepped aside, trying not to laugh. And the bag? Stuff for breakfast. I figured I owe you one after committing pastry theft. You definitely do. He walked in like he lived there, like it wasn't something we had to tiptoe around anymore. We made eggs and toast, and an absolute mess of the kitchen. We ate at the counter, barefoot, sleepy-eyed, legs brushing under the bar stools. And for the first time, it felt like something permanent, not perfect, not flashy, but steady, safe. Later, while we were washing dishes, he said, "You ever think about how this started?" Every day, he smirked. We're weird, undeniably, but it worked. It really did. Then after a pause, he said, "I'm glad I left that first note." I looked at him. Me too. And somewhere in that moment, I realized sometimes the best things don't start with a big moment or a perfect plan. Sometimes they start with a note on your door, a plant you didn't ask for, and someone who notices when your hallway's just a little too quiet. By the time April rolled in, Kyle was sleeping over most nights. Not officially moved in. He insisted he still needed creative chaos space in his own apartment, but his presence had embedded itself into mine in all the ways that mattered. His deodorant was next to mine. His sweatshirt was permanently slung over my desk chair. My Spotify algorithm was ruined in the best way, full of sad indie songs and oddly specific playlists titled things like "Slow Dancing with the Guy Next Door" and "For When You Miss Him, but He's Literally 2 Rooms Away." We had our routines. Saturday mornings were for bagels and loud kitchen music. Weeknights were a roulette of bad TV or working side by side in silence, occasionally stealing glances when we thought the other wasn't looking. And Sundays became sacred. We didn't plan anything, just let the day unfold. Sometimes that meant long walks with no destination. Sometimes it meant staying in bed until noon, talking about everything and nothing. But the thing about comfort is, it can make you forget that life's still moving around you, that the world doesn't stop just because you found something soft. It was mid-April when he said it. We were on the couch, legs tangled, one blanket between us, an unfinished pint of chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream abandoned on the table. He was quiet for a while, one of those lulls that felt like something was trying to form in his throat but hadn't quite made it out yet. "What if I moved in?" I blinked. "Like, for real?" He nodded slowly. "I mean, I basically already live here. My apartment's just become this weird storage unit I go to when I need socks or need to scream into a void." I laughed softly. "We'd need more closet space." "I'd Marie Kondo the shit out of your side of the closet." "I like my side of the closet." He leaned his head against my shoulder. "I know, we didn't decide that night. But it stayed in the air, floating there like a balloon tied to a doorknob, always visible, always waiting for someone to untie the string." The next week, I came home to find his apartment door wide open. Not unlocked. Open. I knocked on the frame, cautiously stepping inside. "Kyle?" His voice came from the bedroom. "Back here." He was packing. Or more accurately, dramatically throwing things into boxes while holding up random objects and declaring them non-essential garbage. "What happened?" I asked. "I got a call from my landlord," he said, folding a hoodie in that weird military role I could never master. "He's raising the rent, like, a lot. That sucks. I told him I wasn't going to pay that, and I'm not." He looked up at me. "So, I guess I'm moving in, if the offer's still good." I didn't hesitate. "It is?" He stared at me like he needed to be absolutely sure. "You're not just saying that because I look sad and dusty?" "No," I said, walking up to him. "I'm saying that because you belong in my space. You always have. The only reason you had your own place was because we were too scared to call this what it is." He didn't kiss me. Not yet. He just looked at me with the kind of expression that said thank you without making a sound. Then he tossed a shirt at me. "Cool, start folding." We moved his stuff in slowly over the next few days. No truck, no dramatic weekend. Just box by box, walk by walk, from one end of the hall to the other. The last thing he brought over was the plant. Leaf Erikson 2. "I think he's ready," Kyle said, placing him gently by the window. He's matured, thrived. I think it's time he lived in the main apartment now. You mean the only apartment? Our apartment. We stood there for a second, both of us letting that word hang in the air. It fit. 2 nights later, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Just one line, scribbled on a napkin. No door between us anymore. I still might leave you notes. K. I folded it carefully and tucked it in the drawer next to the others. By then, I had a whole collection. Over a dozen, maybe more. Some funny, some serious. Some from before I knew what they meant. Some from after. We couldn't stop meaning them. Kyle came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Are you collecting those?" he asked, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Obviously." He laughed. "God, you're a sap," says the guy who names plants and leaves romantic trash on my door. "Guilty," he muttered. Then he kissed the side of my neck. You ever wonder what would have happened if I never left that first note? Every day. He turned me around slowly, like the moment deserved it. "Well," he said, brushing his thumb across my jaw, "I'm glad I did." I kissed him. Not because it felt like a movie moment, but because it didn't. Because it felt like home. A few months after Kyle officially moved in, our hallway became a kind of shared memory. Every time I passed the spot where we used to leave notes, where my door used to be littered with paper, tape marks, little folded corners that hinted at something more, I'd smile. Like the building itself had watched the whole thing unfold and was just quietly keeping our secrets. We settled into life together with the kind of ease that made it feel like we'd always been doing this. Our routines meshed. My weird late-night design bursts didn't bother him. His habit of playing lo-fi beats at 7 a.m. didn't bother me. He folded laundry with militant precision. I cooked better than him and never let him forget it. We didn't talk about forever, but we stopped pretending this wasn't heading there. One night, I came home from work to find Kyle sprawled on the couch, a half-eaten bowl of cereal balanced on his chest. "Big plans tonight?" I asked, toeing off my shoes. "I was gonna wait for you and kiss you dramatically when you walked in," he said. But then I found an unopened box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and things got out of hand. I laughed, flopped down next to him. He turned his face toward me, grinning with a bit of milk on his lip. I wiped it off with my thumb and kissed him anyway. We had arguments, of course. About dishes left in the sink. About thermostat wars. About whether or not love actually was overrated. It is, he disagreed. But none of it felt threatening. None of it ever made me think this isn't going to work. If anything, it made things feel real. Tangible. Like we weren't just playing house. We were building something with room for imperfections. Then came the day he got the call. His dad passed. I remember everything about that moment. The way he answered the phone in the kitchen, barefoot, sun pouring in through the window. The way his voice dropped immediately. The way he didn't cry, not right away, just stood there, phone still in his hand long after the call ended, like he didn't know what to do next. I didn't say anything. I just walked up and pulled him into my arms, held him while his whole body went stiff, and then soft, and then shaking. He didn't speak for a while. When he finally did, he whispered, "I thought I had more time." I kissed the top of his head and said, "I know." Grief came in waves. Some days, he was okay. Some days, he wasn't. I gave him space, but not too much. Let him crawl into bed at 2 p.m. with no questions asked. Let him talk about the complicated love he had for a man who never really understood him but tried harder in the end. And eventually, the heaviness lifted just enough for him to breathe again. One morning, a few weeks after the funeral, I woke up early. Kyle was still asleep, tangled in the sheets like a human burrito, snoring softly with one hand clutching my pillow. I got up quietly, brewed some coffee, and sat on the couch, scrolling through old photos on my phone, ones I didn't even remember taking. There was one of him from months ago, asleep on my old couch, the sun hitting his face just right, a note stuck to his chest that read, "If I die in my sleep, delete my browser history. Love, K." I smiled. Then I got up, found a sticky note, and wrote something I hadn't written before. Not teasing, not sarcastic, just true. You're it for me. Nasty. I stuck it to his side of the fridge, half hidden behind a magnet shaped like a slice of pizza. Later that morning, he saw it. He didn't say anything, just pulled me into a kiss so deep I forgot what I'd made for breakfast. He left the note there, never touched it. Months passed. Seasons changed. We kept living, kept laughing, kept loving in quiet, comfortable ways. And the note stayed on the fridge. A quiet promise, a soft kind of forever.